Hey, it's Shay Seeking, and I'm here with another video. It's Friday night, and I am up kind of late. But I think all day I've been trying to do a quick video or something, and my family has been bursting into the room and getting in the middle of my videos, and I think that everybody's finally asleep, so I should be fine now. But it's just something's been heavy on my heart just to start putting out more videos, even if it's just a little small something, just to document some of the stuff that I have found over the years, and just to share it with you guys. Hopefully, plant a couple of seeds. Like I told you, I'm here to plant seeds and have mine watered. So, um, okay, we're going to talk about just basic terms for anybody that wants to know what I'm really trying to get across on this channel. I am like a random thinker, so I'll just get things out as I think of them, in order to, and try to keep it along the lines where I can kind of stay on track and everybody can see what I'm really trying to say. So, anyways, um, we're looking at this term Aboriginal so that you guys will know when I say these things what I'm actually referring to. So we have Aboriginal. It says around 1660s, first earliest existing from the beginning, um, which reminds me of something biblical. Um, again, especially in reference to the inhabitants of lands colonized by Europeans from Aborigines, see Aborigine. Um, and then it says the specific Australian sense is attested from 1821. So ever since 1821, they basically have been calling Australians Aboriginals. But prior to that, it was speaking of all peoples that were conquered. It says the noun meaning the original inhabitants, and autochthonous or autochthon um, is attested from 1760. Related aboriginally, Aboriginal 1848, Aboriginalism. Okay, so it says know the difference. Aboriginal Americans are darker view people, as you can see over here to the left. I have more pictures that maybe I can pull them up in a minute. And then the natives are late 14th century, natural, hereditary, connected with something in a natural way. From Old French natif or native, born in, raw, unspoiled. Um, okay, and directly from Latin nativus, in it, uh, produced by birth of a nation. Anybody else kind of getting this? And then also when I was looking at native, I saw nativity, and it made me think of the nativity story and the fact that there was already a birth of someone else in the Old Testament, and then the New Testament, you got your birth of your Jesus Christ crucified figure in Bethlehem. I don't know how far I like to go with that particular story, but anyways, just reminds me of that. So it ain't, excuse me, or produced by birth, okay, or the birth of a canal, or birth a ship, is what I get from that. From natus, past particular of not Nazi. I don't think they say Nazi. Nazi. Old Latin, be born. Okay, so yeah, be born. And then related to gene. Wait, get Jai. What? Guy Junior or beget. We hear that word a lot in the Bible. Gene, Genesis, give birth, beget, with derivatives referring to procreation. Again, bringing me back to Genesis. And familial and tribal groups. From late 15th century, sounds probably about right. As born in particular place, from early 15th century as one's birth. Okay, remember the lightness and darkness we talk about in Genesis, and how God saw the lightness and saw that it was good, because at first they were looking on the face of the deep or dark. Mm-hmm. So, in a sense of bound, and pretty much are bound here, or born in servitude or serfdom. Okay, they're serving a purpose. Natives are serving a purpose, and it is to whitewash, to water down, to be I don't like to call it like a decoy, but no disrespect, but it seems to me like they are imposters, maybe even unknowingly at this point. Um, so, anyways, a bondsman or serf, a Native American, a test from 1956. So, Native American 1956, attested from 1956. So I'm thinking, I guess that means that that's probably when the term was pretty much used the most or created. So let me see if I can do this. So now that I've said that, we're going to just look at this coat of arms. Out of many, one people. This coat of arms for Jamaica, which speaks for itself, I guess, prior to colonization, I would think. We're going to look at this here, which is speaking of, let me see if I can bring this in, zoom in, and maybe one more time. Okay. Now, here's some so-called races or whatever from this book. I believe that it was written back in the 1700s, if I'm not mistaken. But it says, what is the second race and what are the characteristics? It says the Asiatic or Mongoloid race of deep yellow color. Their hair is black, stiff, straight, and rather thin. We know that these days Asians have pretty thick hair. But it says rather thin, heads almost square, wide mouth, high cheekbones, small flat noses, flat foreheads, and small eyes. So again, when we go back here to this point, they were going by color, but also in some of the earlier years, they were just using like your features to call out what your race or whatever would be. It says this race compares or something the Japanese, Chinese, Mongoloids, the inhabitants of Siberia in Europe, somebody in Laplanders in Europe, and the Esquimaux, whatever that word is, Indians in America. Then it says, what's the third race? And what are its characteristics? I'm just basically showing you for these two races down here. And it says the American or Indian race found only in America is of a deep copper color. A deep copper, or like some of the writers that first came here said that they were of a mahogany color. We know what mahogany looks like. It looks kind of like the color of those Jamaicans that you saw on that coat of arms, or that I showed you right before this. High cheekbones, eyes black and sunken, large faces, and robust bodies. And when I say robust bodies, I'm talking about, I found with some of the Hawaiian the First Nations of Hawaii, their women, or they were also robust or really big people. Um, and I have some ancient images of the first uh, people of Hawaii, and they were big, and the women had short half afros. Like I have one of a queen. It says the race can whatever of all the American Indians except the Esquimaux, whatever, you know what that word is, who belong to the Asiatic race. So when you think about that, still, I'm thinking about like an Asian. I mean, the images that I've found so far show Asiatic, I mean, or Asian um, type people when I read that word, or so far from what I found. But we're gonna just look at the fact that um, this lady is a dark brown skinned woman. She has more round, fuller. Uh, her face is rounder and chubbier. A lot of women in America have a more fuller face. Um, uh, her cheekbones are pretty high. Her eyes are, I mean, she looks like me or somebody that I know, or just so called African American woman in America today. Her hair is short and curly. We all know that we have different textures of curls here in America, but most of us do have a nice curl pattern now that we're going natural, and we're starting to see what our hair really looks like without burning it out with the perms. We're able to see that our hair is not really nappy or kinky. It's not even really as dry as some people in other parts of the world seem to have their hair look when the depiction that we actually get, right? So it's not as coarse, um, and it's more of a soft afro-y hair. All we have to do is put coconut oil or something, and it changes the texture of the hair. Excuse me. So, and we've always felt comfortable with our hair. We haven't. I don't think that this is the whole country of Africa, or of course, or the whole continent of Africa that's supposedly broken up into different countries or nations. Of course, I don't think that they all do this, but a lot of their people have different traits and things that they, or different, what do you want to call it? Ways that they do their hair that are a lot different than what we do here. We've always had like our afro or our braids or French braids or plaits or something. And of course they have braids and stuff there too, but I think you guys know the more tribal people that are still there do certain exotic things with their hair that we don't do here. So oh, and then you have your African. And I still think that this is, it's funny how for the American, they left the female, which America was a matriarchal society prior to colonization. So out of all of these different things, they basically, uh, the only race, I think even the Caucasian one above here, the only race that shows a female in place of who the people are is America. And we all know that a lot of the women were actually here already, and most of the African slaves out of the 250,000 in total that they brought over during the slave trade, we know that those were men and young boys. Only a very small amount of women were on those ships that came over here because they used the indigenous American woman to mate with Africans and so-called Africans and Europeans and different people in order to create their races, because a lot of slavery has to do with um, breeding, or however you want to say it. I'm just going to say it how it sounds. And we don't really talk about that here in school or anything, but a lot of it had to do with that, creating their races. They came here. It's a creation story. I mean, if you follow me for long enough, I'll show you a lot of different similarities that the Bible has with the actual events that happened from the 1200s, I guess, on up until where we are now. And it's so funny that we can go ahead and look at the book and look at Revelations to try to see what the end times is going to have happen, but we don't think that we should be looking at it to see how this whole thing started during colonization, and think that the Bible, because I'm telling you, I know for a fact deep down in my soul and from the research that I've done, and I have to gather up my stuff again to be able to show you, but the actual Bible is actually really about America. So, I mean, I know that's a shock to a lot of people, but if you really look at it and you really do deep research on history, there's no turning back. I mean, dates and everything. So, if you know how to look at it and which calendar you need to use to do the research. So, okay, anyways, what is the fourth race and what are its characteristics? It says the African or Negro race. They have a jet black skin, which we know that's really not the case over here in America. 90% of us pretty much have a copper color or a nice red or yellow tone skin. That's including the islands, even when it's hot there. A lot of people don't have really jet black skin. It says low, narrow foreheads. Most of us don't really have that. Let's see. Black woolly hair. Some of us have woolly. It depends on what. I mean, can I take so-called Caucasians narrative of trying to explain what types of hair and really trying to make a difference between the hair of the American Indian and the so-called African? Of course, they're gonna put woolly hair because this is all trying to throw you off a little bit. Thick lips. Some of us have thick lips and some don't. And long heels. That sticks out to me because I've looked at certain pictures of some people or some of the tribes over there in Africa and noticed that they do have like a hook or like a more kind of thing on the back of their heels or their feet or whatever. And it says the native inhabitants of Africa, except those parts before mentioned. Okay, what before mentioned? I don't recall them mentioning anything. Unless when people try to say that Africa was the beginning, I usually look at it at the Pangea, from the Pangea angle, thinking that somehow, some way, maybe these continents were attached at some point in time. They could possibly still be attached. We don't know. And that there was nations here and nations there, because I've highly doubt that from the information that I've read that everybody came from Africa. And if that's the case, then why do they say now that why do we only make reference now that Africans, so-called Africans, I know there's different tribes and stuff, but we're just using that as a term now. And then so-called American Negroes or whatever. I just think that I know that most of us were already here. So it says of the larger islands in the Pacific and Indian Ocean and the other descendants in the whatever quarters of the globe, the whatever quarters of the globe, consecutive this and that. So if anything, we're really talking about the fact that along the equator or the warmer parts of the lands were probably darker race people. Your skin probably got a little bit darker closer to the equator, but whatever. So, and then you have the Malay race with the European features. So it was a lot about features back then, like I said before, not really the skin. But then it says they have deep brown colored skin, black hair. They didn't really want to tell you how much, but I mean, what kind of hair. But I know it didn't look like this, I don't think, from the pictures that I've been looking at lately and that I've seen. It's more frizzly or afro-y. That's just my opinion. Large mouth and nose and slender whatever. So Philippines and whatever. Okay. So anyhow, we're looking at this term. We're just looking at some quick things here. And then this is a little meme that I picked up along the way, and it says Pan Africans be like, I don't care if your grandma said you was Indian. I don't care if you have an oral history link to an Indian tribe that goes back 500 years. If your ass is classified as black, your ass is African. I thought that was pretty funny because that's kind of like how it is. I mean, you can't go around and claim any type of nationality other than what you've been taught in school, and you don't understand how deep the deception goes. And if you don't understand who your people were and originally where they were, you can't even go back to fathom how messed up this whole thing is and how deep we are in and how much we have been deceived. Nobody wants to admit that they've been deceived or that they have believed such a huge lie and their whole life is based on this lie. But it is what it is. Okay? They've been knowing how to fix our communities from day one. They just will not do it. They did it for the Jews that came over. They did it for other foreigners and immigrants that came over. The presidents got in. They said, hey, if this crime is going to be going on with these mobsters and stuff that was going on in New York and stuff back in the day, they made certain acts and they did certain things to help those people. And they knew exactly what was wrong. The crime is going on like this because there ain't no jobs. We need to get them jobs. We need to get these kids stuff to do. We need to do these things. They didn't just talk about it. They actually did it. The only thing is we're still talking about it in our communities, knowing exactly like we're some kind of animals or something. But you just think that it's because of your color, and it's actually because of your nationality that's hidden from you. And they want you to think that you're from somewhere else so you can disconnect from the land. So, okay. Let me see. So this is a picture too of some savages of the Americas and Pacific Islands, and we see good and well. This is a robust woman. Her hair is soft and curly, and she has her baby. And you would think this is somebody from Africa, but no, this is right here in America. I don't know how I get this on here so many times. Okay, this is a post that I put up. Oh, and again, you guys can check me out on my page on Facebook under Shay Seeking. It's the same name. I have at least 5 years worth of content that you can go back and look at my pictures and stuff and see that I've been putting out a lot of stuff and sharing stuff that's been shared with me over the years. And if you want to catch up or get to know kind of where I'm coming from, you can kind of look back at some of those posts and I'll try to bring them here too. It's just easier for me to get used to doing this and get out of my shyness or whatever to do it this way. So here's a quote by Carlos, whatever, Marquez or Marquez. And it says, the Negro type is seen in the most ancient Mexican sculpture. The Negro figure frequently in the most remote traditions of some American pueblos or pueblos. It is to this race doubtlessly belongs the most ancient skeletons distinct from the red American race, which have been found in various places from Bolivia to Mexico. It is likely that we repeat America was a Negro continent. Okay, and this was said in 1920. So there were people, that's why I don't really deal with the race baiting and stuff like that anymore, because there were people telling the truth back then. It's not their fault that I guess the information didn't get out. What your mainstream media, mainstream television, mainstream education plantations, all these places have been or taken on the people that actually created your books for your colleges and own your colleges and are have their foot in the door with the education system today. They are the ones that created the books. They are the ones that chose to leave this information out and to indoctrinate us with the false information over the years for generations and generations. So in order to keep their agenda going afloat, but now we're steering away from that and we're going back and we're picking up the sticks that some of our ancestors left us, and we're going with that and we're looking deeper into this information. And plus, this is something that's written. This is a biblical so-called prophecy, or it's something that was said so to happen. So it's happening now. and we get to witness a beautiful time to be here on this earth, and we get to witness it. And a lot of us were placed here at this point in time in order to participate in this liberation of certain peoples. So I'm thankful for that. I could still be asleep, and that would be the worst feeling in the world. So we're gonna go with this term American. 1570s, originally one of the Aboriginal peoples discovered in the hemisphere. So I'm not saying that all people had curly hair. I think that there were all different textures, all different complexions. But I'm just saying that the most people we're here were the so-called Negroids, or we are the people that were here. They didn't need to go to Africa to get anybody. Forget about all the false information that, oh, Indians were so crazy that they just couldn't be, they all died because they just couldn't be trained to be slaves or what. Come on, man. Who's the most resilient people in this world today that shouldn't be here today, and we're still here? The remnant is still here. So you can miss me with all that, because they have their own reservations to this day, and they still haven't been able to do anything to take back portions or more of the Americas. But you have to understand that those are not the original people. They got played once they helped these people in the US, United States or whatever, get their footing in. They got played and they got stripped of whatever they gave them as well. So we're not the only ones that have been played, but they did go in, like Claude Anderson says, they did go in with the so-called white man, which is really just the people that run things. I always tell you that regular white man next door to me and you, they don't have any power. They're slaves just like we are. But they're just treated differently, just like the house slave and then the field slave. So they're just the house slaves now, and we're the field slaves still, supposedly. So they don't really have any powers, which is why they're still in the same situation that they're in right now today. Because they are just, what they say, the real owners are preoccupied. We're too busy being slaves and being indoctrinated and keep on doing it to our children. But I hope that the book stops here. Anyways, it says one of the Aboriginal peoples discovered in the Western Hemisphere by Europeans. The original sense is now Native Americans. The sense of residents of North America, of European, originally British descent, is from 1765. Okay, and let's not forget that some of those British or Europeans were darker viewed people. So the adjective is 1590, pertaining to the Western Hemisphere and its Aboriginal inhabitants. But see, usually this is a shock to see Aboriginal inhabitants, because they usually save that term and try to use it like it's only speaking of Australia, when they say the Aborigines or whatever. And it says, from America, the sense of pertaining to the residents of North America of European, originally British descent, is first recorded in 1640. That's funny. Later, pertaining to the United States, French, American, Spanish, and Italian, Americano, German, Americanish, attested from 1838, which is when they really started to kick in, changing your history. The American Beauty rose, so-called 1886. I can't remember what happened then, but I think that's a really important year to know something about. American English is a sub-language, attested from 1806. Ameringlish is from 1974. Again, I'm just planting seeds. And this is from, I think, just the dictionary. No, this is the Webster's 1828 dictionary, where the definition of American was pertaining to America. And it says, a native of America, originally applied to the Aboriginals in America. Um, so what this is basically telling you is that if there were first copper colored races, and if any person that's calling themselves so-called black or African American, you might want to pick up a penny, put it on your hand, and look and see if there's a couple pennies, see if you can find your shade there. It's probably talking about you. And we have to remember that a lot of us have grandparents that told us that we had Indian in our family. Um, but before them, their parents were scared to death to speak of it, because you can get your children taken away, you can lose your life, your children can lose their lives, because they made it illegal for you to claim your American Indian nationality at some point in time. I can't remember exactly what date it was, and then they change your status on the census and wrote what they wanted to change you to Negro and black or colored. But I guess they came out sometime during Obama's term and said that those people can kind of come back and claim their nationality, because what happened is people were changing nationalities and they changed it to colored. So if you can find somebody in your family with colored on their birth certificate back a couple generations, then you might want to go ahead and check and see what you can do to find out more. So let me see. I don't know how long I've been talking, but I'm trying to be kind of quick. Native, again, this is just a dictionary random definition: a person born in a specific place. This means that you were grafted in, like the Bible says. Think about this kind of stuff when you're reading the Bible. If you decide to go back into it, or pick it up, dust it off, and kind of just really go into it to try to see if you can see some similarities. It says, in a specified place or associated with a place by birth. That's everybody in America pretty much at this point. That's just born here. You're a native, but there had to be an indigenous people here, or a first peoples. And those peoples are the ones that they would rather keep under the carpet and not really talk about it. So it says, whether subsequently resident or not. Okay, so whether you're a real resident or original or not. Associated with a place or circumstance of a person's birth. Again, by birth. Okay, and then it says of indigenous origin or growth. Okay, they grew off of the original people. I think a lot of these people did. Some people think that they just came here from somewhere else. I think that they did, but I think that they also had to take on wives and dilute the bloodline in order to get their foot in the door. The $5 Indians and other people, I think that they had to do it that way to lighten up the bloodline, which they thought was nice. And so that's what they continued to do until they totally stripped any ounce of you and your hair texture out of the place. Okay, so again, we're seeing that the local inhabitants or resident or person born, but it says here, dated, offensive, a non-white original inhabitant of a place, as regarded by European colonists or travelers. Okay, well, I don't know what they're trying to say about that. An animal or a plant indigenous to a place. Well, we know that these people are not animals or plants. I don't think they are. Associated with a place or circumstances of a person's birth, the indigenous inhabitants of a place. But we know that this is not really true. Matter of fact, I've looked at this several times, and I don't think that it ever really said anything about trying to confirm that they're indigenous or whatever. The origin, okay, yeah, some of the people did originate here because they were born here, or a growth. And that's what, like the Bible says, they're going to be like a parasite. Not trying to be rude, I'm just making points to kind of show you when we're talking about that. Tell me it don't sound like we're talking about real history that just happened. See, they had to make you think that the Bible is so old so you can not really connect the dots, but I'm telling you right now, the first Bible was not even printed in America until the 1800s or so. 1870s or something like that. And the first, and guess what? The actual first Bibles that were printed in America and that people can actually have were the American Indian Bible, because it was talking about your past. So just think about how much they can erase information and change information out of 3 generations of people. So quasi belonging to a person. Okay, y'all see what I'm coming from, where I'm coming from. Okay, and that's why they put those people on reservations to reserve or preserve that particular bloodline, or those particular types of people. And which is why they tried to get some of those so-called black um, Cherokees that could not, that got kicked out of the tribe, but I guess they had to let them back in because they had documentation. In the same and see, like what's his name? Claude Anderson said that they went, those Native Americans went in with the so-called Europeans to keep us out of our place. And we're still out of our place to this day. And they're reaping the benefits of what your ancestors died for while you're still looking over there to Africa to see for what tribe you came from, which we already know that DNA is a hoax. They came out and said it. That is just for fun or whatever, just for they can't even go back and tell you that much information. So, and also, just so you know, in the small print, they take your DNA and use it for other things other than those tests. So once you apply and send your DNA off, it actually belongs to them and they sell it off to different companies. So, anyways, so all that made me think about the eve. It says a day or period of time of the day immediately before an event or an occasion, the evening or day before a religious festival. But anyways, we'll go deeper into that another time. Nativity, again, native or birth. And that whole story of born in a manger and all that stuff, and with the Eastern Star or Northern Star, whatever it was, still, it reminds me of Birth of a Nation. It could be when, we'll just keep it as that for now. A natural, hereditary, connected with something in a natural way. Native, okay, so it would be, oh my goodness, innate, produced by birth. Yeah, all this was produced by the birth. And then it says be born, uses words like beget, that they beget this and beget that. Another thing you could give reference to in that book, from late 1500 or 15th century, born in a particular place, da 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 da. Okay, born in bondage. Okay, European non-nations where European hold political power. Okay, applied from mid 17th century to original inhabitants of non-European nations where Europeans hold political power. Okay, so I guess that's why that definition of America does says native or Aboriginal or whatever. For example, American Indians by 1630s. It's so funny that they say they brought you over here in the 1690s, but if you look at the charts and look at the things that were going on before the 1619 and after, within a couple of years, and you'll see. Especially just remember that number, that they only brought 250,000 slaves in total from Africa to North America during the entire slave trade. They had already done a slave trade with American Indians that lasted way longer, and it started way before the slave trade or the transatlantic or any of those other slave trades. When we get down to the terms autochthonous or I just tried to practice it before I got on. Ain't gonna happen. So 1640s, one sprung from the soil. You remember in the Bible when they say it took the soil. And like I told y'all, I'm not saying that this is exactly what it means. This is what my intuition tells me. This is how I look at the book. I can't look at it any other way. I've tried to go around it, but looking at these terms and deeper into the meanings, this is just what I feel. Sprung from the soil, um, he inhabits. Okay, so you remember that the Lord God, not God, but the Lord God, God had already done his thing in Genesis, and then the Lord God decided to take from Adam or those beings and take a rib, and we don't. A rib could also mean something from DNA. It can mean something from a part on a person. If you look deeper into it, and they took the dirt and they took slime or something and put it together and created this person, you have to just think it's not, some of the times it's literal and some of the times it's not. So natives, primitive inhabitants, that's another important one. Primitive, meaning you were here prior to or the first. Literally sprung from the land itself, that's meaning that you were from that place. Used of the ethic. I'm getting tired. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. So I can see myself slowing down. And others who claim descent. And look at that word descent too. We're going to look at it later on. But when you really see what it means, you'll see how it is starting to connect you back to the land as well. From the whatever and the land, the earth, the soil. So a lot of times in the Bible, when we're reading about the earth, it's actually talking about you or indigenous or brown people. So native, aboriginal, indigenous, 1805. Again, that's pretty early. So you around that time, some of us were still attached to our heritage, but pretty much after that and around that, just forget about it. It's hard to even find information. Not that it's impossible, it's just harder. Inhabitants of a place, indigenous rather than the descending from migrants or colonists. That is what you are. I believe this is the term that I like to use, even though I can't. Let's listen. Nope, can't even do it because it's a screenshot. Okay. Of a deposit or formation formed in its present position. Formed. It's another word. Okay. Autochthon. In ancient Greece, the concept of autochthonous means the original inhabitants of a country as oppressed or opposed. I'm sorry, y'all. As opposed to settlers and those of their descendants who kept themselves free from an admixture of foreign peoples. So there is a such thing as those people. I hate when people say everybody was mixed. It was actually illegal. A lot of times during slavery for these people to mix. At some point in time, it was a biblical thing that they didn't want to mix. Go back through the Bible and look at mixing or them saying not give your wives to these people and all that. Look at Maryland in the first. I'm sorry, I just can pull it from my head. I can't really get all this stuff organized to show it to you. But look at the amalgamation laws of Maryland and then go back in that book and see, don't you see what I see? So a lot of times you can read these acts and you can read these laws and these papers that were written up and stuff, and it just sounds just like you reading out the Bible. And this is why they don't tell you American Indian history other than Thanksgiving, and this is why they don't tell you so-called Black history or the real history of the dark-skinned American Indian races, because it was at some point in time is going to link up to slavery and it's going to make more sense this way and seeing where you're from here than going all the way over to Africa. Okay, so they kept themselves free from the admixture of foreign peoples in mythology. See, they like to put mythology on your history. The autochthonous, Um, are most mortal who have oh are those mortals who have sprung from the soil, rocks, and trees. Very interesting. Remember that part in the beginning of the book when it says something about evening and saw that it was good. Look at those 7 days of creation and really think. I'm really thinking seven, uh, because years can mean, or days can mean years and all this other stuff when you're looking into the Bible. So yeah, we can really think about that. Seven. We're not really talking about creation of the things you think we're talking about in those 7 days. Um, okay. Y'all can think I'm crazy if you want, but hopefully I'll be able to bring more stuff out for you guys to see. Proper name, biblical first woman, Hawa, literally a living being from base. Hawata stands out. There's a restaurant down in Wisconsin um, that name kept sticking out to me, and I ended up looking it up, and it was kind of interesting, the stuff that came up. But Arabic Haya, like most explain the names in Genesis, this is probably based on a folk etymology, or an imaginative playing with sound. In the Hebrew here, the phonetics, okay, whatever, Hawa, Eve, the root Haya, to live. It is proposed that Eve's name conceals very different origins, for it sounds suspiciously like an Aramaic word for a serpent. Okay, the 5 books of Moses, blah, 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 whatever. Okay, so y'all get my drift. You get my drift. Original, whatever, descent recorded in 1640, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we already looked at that. So, I say all that to say, I hope I didn't bore you guys too much. I want to thank you guys for watching. And let's see if I can pull something else up. Let's see, open that one. Yeah. So, anyways, I guess I will see you guys later on. I hope I didn't bore you to death, but I just wanted to really break it down to you guys as to what those terms mean from when we go further from here. And okay, this did come up, so I just want to show you guys. This says Pawnee Chiefs. Okay. And here they got the same necklace thing on that reminds me of Wakanda or whatever. I'll have to do more research on these guys, but we can obviously see that this guy has a nice soft afro here. We can see that he has some afro. We can't really see his hair because it's covered. I also see something, this look kind of like that thing that one of those Egyptian goddesses has on the head with the sun disc in the middle. We can also see that this guy look like his hair is cut short, but there's a little bit of fro sticking up from here. And then he has the head wrap thing on. And we can all tell that these people are dark skinned, and some of us have family members that look really close to what these people look like. So I wanted to show you guys this. It says an Indian in full dress. And I was just looking at this guy, and again, he has that the teeth thing around his neck like this, and I'm looking at this tree right here because I've been looking into the antebellum and the ooh, goodness, I've been looking into the antediluvian peoples, and how antediluvian actually means before the flood, or Noah's flood in particular. And y'all think I'm crazy, but I got some stuff to show y'all about that too. Hopefully it'll be a quicker video than this. I was just looking at how tall he is and how tall this tree is, because they said that in the beginning there was giants in the land in those days, Nephilim. And if you look at antediluvian, you'll start seeing things like Nephilim and before the flood and Noah and things like that. And we're really only talking about the early days, prior to what they even start teaching you about in school. We're really talking about things that occurred prior to colonization. So anyways, thank you guys for staying up late with me and watching this, and hopefully I can get you guys a couple more videos out so you can get caught up on some of the stuff that I'm trying to show you. But just remember this guy. I mean, I know people that look just like him, but look how tall he is compared to even these mountains. Look how tall he is compared to this teepee. You really think this dude about to be up in his teepee? See, they think they slick with these pictures and stuff, but I got some more stuff for y'all.